By the end of this video, you're going to have a better understanding of how to grow elderberry than most people do, and how to grow it at any time of the year. And not only that, you're going to get an understanding of why things work better in certain situations so that you can make the best decisions for your garden. Be sure to stick around until the end because I'm going to be slipping in lots of little tips and tricks here that a lot of other videos on YouTube don't mention at all. So let's start from the beginning with the basics. Right now we are in winter. Right now, the very end of January. And this is one of my older elderberries. This is a York elderberry. And when you buy elderberry cuttings, you're going to get something generally that has two nodes on it. And let me show you what I mean. Generally what someone's going to do is they're going to come and they're going to take a cutting. Let's go ahead and take a cutting here. Okay. So this is a typical elderberry cutting. Elderberries are very resilient plants and generally pretty fast growing, and they will root from nodes and also from lenticels. Now if we look over here, we can see two different things that are going on. We've had an unseasonably warm winter, and so a lot of my elderberries are starting to break buds early. This one in particular, for some reason, it actually started leafing out, and you can see the damage that's been caused from the frost we've been getting lately. That is why it's best to grow elderberries from dormant cuttings, that is before the buds break. But as I'm going to show you in this video, you can grow elderberry from cuttings at any time of year. Winter is the most common time of year for people to plant elderberry cuttings, and it really depends on the climate that you're in. Where I'm at in the Pacific Northwest, we rarely get really hard freezes where the ground is rock solid hard. And so that allows us to plant things almost all throughout the winter time, depending on where you are. Where if you're in a colder climate and the ground freezes very hard for several inches, you're going to have to wait to plant your cuttings until the spring thaws the soil. And planting elderberries in the winter is the easiest way to plant elderberry cuttings, because all you're doing is putting these in the ground and letting them grow in place. Let's take a look at the classic cutting that you would generally receive if you ever bought them. You're generally going to receive something that's going to be a little bit larger diameter than this, and it's going to have two nodes, one node and two nodes. Okay, elderberries root from the nodes and also from these little bumpy sections in here called lenticels. Okay, and to prove that point, let's take a look at a cutting that I rooted in around mid-summer last year. Okay, if you look closely, there are no nodes here. It's just rooting straight from the lenticels, and there actually is a new shoot developing here. So what can we take away from that? Well, from each of our cuttings, we can actually get two plants. These are actually two cuttings right here that we could use, where most people are just sticking this whole thing in the ground up to the node, the first node or so. You're actually underutilizing the plant material that you have. So in wintertime, let's go take a look at how we can grow elderberry cuttings in the winter. From growing elderberry from cuttings in the winter, it is best to have nodes underground. Planting in the winter with just the lenticels as the place to root seems to not have as great a success. Planting cuttings with only the lenticels seems to be a good strategy for the summertime when the soil is nice and warm and um, it's generally easier to maintain the moisture levels. Um, so what I found is that it's a lot easier to uh, grow in the winter with having these nodes underground or under the soil. Okay. Elderberry is a very hardy plant. You don't need to worry too much about the how like alkaline or how acidic the soil is when you're first starting to grow these. When we're in this context right here, just growing them out to the point where we can plant them elsewhere, I do not think anything about soil acidity or alkalinity. You know, again, this is just sand, sand, coconut coir, and perlite in this mix here. Um, and a little bit of ambient soil in there, or native soil. So the classic way that people plant cuttings in the winter, um, that you're expecting them to grow throughout the spring and throughout the whole year, is all you do is you have your cutting. Say you had, if you have one node, just bury it in the ground just like this. Just like that. Okay? That's just how the ones inside are planted. Okay, you see this? If I only have one node, I can plant it just like that. It'll work fine. Okay? If I had two nodes, you could shove it in the ground just like this. Okay? The further down you can push it, the better. All right, so there may be times where you want your plants to grow quicker in the winter. For me, because I am growing nursery plants, I really utilize my heating table right here. And so all I have is a light, well draining mix of sand, coconut coir, and perlite. And I have some weed fabric. And I've actually just put this on the heating mat. And I'll show you whenever we look at the tree inside. But these are actually starting to develop some roots within the past month. It's only been it hasn't been a solid month yet. It's been like 29 days. Um, and so I'll show you the roots on the ones inside. I'm not going to dig up these because I checked them recently, and it's not good practice to dig these up until they're ready. So one reason why I grow elderberries this way is because I'm trying to experiment with ways to get plants that are just big enough for me to ship, but not so big that I have to fully pot them. And whenever I'm shipping, I am trying to just ship bare root plants, and so it's a fine line between I want a plant that somebody's happy with, that's big enough to be a start, and but not so big that I need a big box to ship them because that's big boxes are more expensive. Um, and so it's a fine line and it's a balance, and I'm still trying to work that out. And so basically, I'll show you what I've been doing to maximize my cuttings here. I can actually take one set of nodes and plant them. That's what's in here. Traditionally, people only say you have to have two nodes to grow elderberries, but that's not the case. So I'm hopeful for this technique to be able, for me to be able to grow elderberries throughout the winter to be ready to ship in February, March when people are really interested in buying plants because nursery sales, it's a seasonal thing for especially for bare root plants. People are most jazzed about it in the spring. And so by the time if I plant things in the summer, I have to keep them all watered and they're going to be a lot bigger. I'm going to have to charge more. But these, they're going to be on the smaller side, but give them one more year, and they're going to be caught up to your bigger 1 gallon pot plants. And so perennials, they're a plant of patience. Perennials are plants of patience. And so if you're just willing to wait one more year, you're going to have a plant that is just as big as the one you bought in your gallon pot, and it's going to be half the price, if not even more of a discount. So that's why I'm trying to offer good plants that are at an economical price that allow people to actually get them on the landscapes. One question you might have is, at what point do I pot my cuttings or put them in the ground? Whenever you pull up the plant, you want it to have a whole clump of soil attached to all the roots that you can gently shake and not break roots off. At that point, that's usually whenever I feel like they're strong enough to put in the ground. Now, growing elderberry indoors is another option, and the technique you're going to be using is the same one we just saw in the greenhouse. Now, there are some considerations with this. Let me show you. All right, well, excuse the mess here. This is a messy area right now. But as you can see, we had the same setup as we are using in the greenhouse. Let me go ahead and pull this out and we'll take a better look at it. As you can see here, we're getting some similar results as to what we saw in the greenhouse. Again, this is less than a month has passed. Now, there's some key differences here that I want to highlight to you that are important. First is that I want you to see how much growth is on these elderberry shoots. One of the benefits of growing in the wintertime with growing outside on a heating table is that you have heat on the bottom and you have cold on top, and so that promotes good root development while also suppressing bud break. And so that's how you can get nice, good root systems developing without a whole bunch of green growth happening at the same time. And so the reason this is all part of just my experiment to figure out what my best strategy is for growing out elderberries to a decent growing size that aren't like full-size plants. And one thing that's interesting in here is that these are just some stubs with one set of nodes on them. And let's take a look here. I'm going to try to be very careful. This is not best practice to dig these up. Let's take a look at the root development here. Look at those roots. That is less than a month on the heating table. That's pretty good. I'll go ahead and bury that back in there. One other strategy you could use to perhaps mitigate this is to break up the light exposure that these cuttings have. Now that's an untested theory that I want to do a video on, and that's going to be an experiment for later. I think for winter propagation, an outside heating mat type of setup is going to be your best bet, no matter if it's early or late winter. All right, now we can talk about summer propagation of elderberry from cuttings. So whenever it's summertime, obviously your cuttings are going to be leafed out, or all the branches are going to be leafed out. So we had discussed that typically people plant with 2 nodes on cuttings, but as I explained and showed you, you can get away with only using one node because the cuttings will root not only from the nodes but also from those lenticels. And so what I'm doing here is just preparing these cuttings with just one set of nodes. And I've prepared an area here, and I'm just going to bury the cuttings and just slide them in and just make sure that the goal here is you want to make sure there's at least one set of nodes in contact with soil, or if there's a lot of leaves there, you can actually just bury the stem and just have the leaves poking up. I found that this was very successful doing it either way, just like this. And to prove to you that this works, this was probably about a month later, and I'm just checking a lot of these, a month and a half or so, and pretty much all of these cuttings have rooted in. Now, the biggest thing, obviously, with summer is that you need to make sure things are well watered and don't dry out. I didn't do a humidity tent or anything like that. The biggest challenge with rooting any cutting in the summertime is just the top vegetation drying out. And so you need to make sure these are watered. I found that if you bury the cuttings deeper where the leaves are just poking out, those tend to do a little bit better. And so within a month or two, you're going to have some decent root development here, and you can move these to the landscape.